is ending the free breakfast and free lunch program unless the states step up. And we will make sure in Texas the poorest kids don't go hungry, by the way, even if the president is happy to take food off the table of the poorest of the poor. We will find a way in Texas. But I'm telling all the superintendents in Texas right now, you have about 3 weeks left of the school year. Do not enact this policy. 70 to 80% of the people in your school district do not want it. Do not be blackmailed by the federal government. We will work through this. I'm meeting with our Attorney General later. I know other Attorney Generals are already working on this around the country. The battle line has been drawn in a way that the President does not know the line he crossed this time. When you take on mom and dad in their homes, when the President threatens their children, he has made a huge mistake. And I believe that if Donald Trump handles this correctly, as I believe he will, he already said this should be a states' rights issue this morning. I've already been in touch with the campaign late last night, since I somehow got in the middle of this early. I believe this not only is going to usher in school choice in America, but it could well usher in Donald Trump into the White House, because Hillary Clinton supports this policy. She supported Anise Parker. And this is going to be the opportunity for Donald Trump to get those African American Democrat families, the Hispanic Democrat families, the Democrat Anglo families, who will not abide by this. Boy, you know what? People can be pretty loyal to their politics or their candidates, but when you interfere with their kids and the values they want to teach their kids, you lose your standing very quickly, and the President will lose his standing. I believe in the Texas legislature, many Democrats will support our bill that we will file to address these issues. I'm so sad that we are at this point this morning. I knew it in my bones. You know, yesterday some of you asked me, well, how do you know this? I said, well, you just connect the dots. The superintendent is appointed to an education commission by Barack Obama. I don't know if they're personal friends or not. It's the same policy based on Title IX. It all fits together. It just came much sooner than I thought. Any questions?
Governor,
Jack?
let me ask you about, yesterday you called for new legislation on this. I'm wondering now, given what the President has done, is this worth a special session to you?
That will be a decision by the governor. I think because school is ending now in a few weeks, and we'll have the summer to work through it, and we will get into the fall, and many things could happen during the summer. I personally don't know, but that's the governor's decision. If he decides to do that, I'm fully supportive. But we can actually take the summer to kind of work on this. But we do have to have some clarity. And again, I hope the superintendents are listening. Stand up against the federal government. Stand up for the families. And the school boards, stand up for the people elected you against this policy. You don't have to enact it now. You don't have to enact it in the fall. We will work our way through this. And again, I believe we will prevail in the courts. But in the meantime, unless Obama backs down, and he may just put this out there, and now when he gets this pushback, he may back away. But I'll leave that to the governor. I will say this, that I do think that when we do come in January, and it's up to the governor, this could well be an emergency item.
Lieutenant Governor,
Yeah,
talk to me about, with this policy, what do you do in terms of how does the janitor clean the bathroom? How do you go about doing all this? What's the plan there?
Well, these are all the questions I was asking about Fort Worth. It's just bigger. For example, let me tell you how far the President goes. And we'll see his official letter today. All of this came out from the New York Times late last night. The President goes so far to say if a school district wants to create a separate bathroom for a transgender student, that's not allowed. The transgender student must be allowed to go into the girls' room or into the boys' room. And many school districts are using common sense. We make accommodations for all kinds of students. As many of you know, I've been involved with children with severe disabilities in our schools for 30 years. I've raised, I'm told, over $15 million for children with disabilities. We make special accommodations for students. We make accommodations for students who have dyslexia. We make accommodations for students who may need to take special medicine during the day. We make all kinds of accommodations. And don't anyone print I'm saying that being transgender is a disability. My point is that we have we have accommodations for lots of students in our schools. Lots of students. And you can make an accommodation for a transgender student. You can make an accommodation. You can make sure that they have their privacy in the bathroom. The president says, no, 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 no. They must be allowed to shower with the opposite sex if they believe they're that sex. And by the way, the reason, so your question, Julie, is yes, there are going to be all kinds of questions, all kinds of lawsuits.
But
How's
the
this
question
handled?
is like if you feel that you need to use the bathroom of your birth.
Right.
A male janitor, can he go into the women's room to clean the room? I mean, where does this go?
I don't have for the answer to that today, but this is why this was flawed policy by Superintendent Scribner. And if this doesn't wake up the parents of Fort Worth, I don't know what will. There are all those questions, Julie. Look, the disruption it's going to cause in the classroom, teachers are not happy with this. The disruption it's going to cause now. Kids make fun of each other. In fact, this whole movement to be sure that we don't harass or bully any child for any reason in the schoolroom or on social media, the president is undermining that. Because now kids are going to be bullied. Not the transgender kids, but maybe the straight kids. This is a disaster. Yes, sir.
Governor,
Yeah.
what accommodation would you support for transgender students?
Well, because I do believe in local control, when a superintendent and the school board allow the parents to have input, as they did in the Keller Independent School District, for example, when Keller thought about this policy and the parents said no, they've made accommodations. Let every school decide. Let the parents decide. And the normal accommodation would be that there could be a separate bathroom. It's up to each school. I'm not laying out a policy today. Look, Monday afternoon, I was sitting down doing an interview with another television station, and the story broke on Fort Worth. And I was thrust into it. No one else was stepping up. I stepped up. We've learned a lot about that situation. Now I'm thrust into this story. It's not a fight of my choosing, so I have to think through all the policy issues. But we can accommodate, again, Phil, like we do all kinds of students with all kinds of issues. You know, kids have issues when they come to school, and schools have a tough job accommodating them, but they do. But this is now taking one child with an issue and saying everyone else, for whatever reason, the superintendent and now the president have, makes no sense. Again, it's going to undermine public school. I said this Tuesday. This will be the end of public education if this prevails. People will pull their kids out. Homeschooling will explode. Private schools will increase. School choice will pass. You know, we passed it last time in the Senate and the House didn't. I hope the House wakes up this time. Not that the members, we probably had the votes, by the way.
Lieutenant Governor, can
Yes,
we
sir.
circle back around to school finance as far as this decision? You said the court said it's a constitutional system, but though not perfect. What does it
Sure.
mean for the Texas Senate in 2017?
Well, look, I've been on education for 8 years. I chaired my last session in the Senate. I've worked on finance for 2 years. School finance is a very difficult issue because we have 1,200 school districts, 8,500 schools, 300,000 teachers, thousands of principals, and I mean, it's very complex. School districts are different all over the state. We're a very regionalized state because we're so big, and so it is tough to make sure that some of the poorest counties, it's the Robin Hood issue, which doesn't work well. Now you have some poor districts who are giving money that are having problems because the economy turned in their county because of oil and gas. It's a very complicated system. But the Supreme Court today said what we have been doing is constitutional. The 600 school districts that sued lost, and we will continue to work, and I'll continue to work to be sure that every student in Texas, look, I'm a big public education guy. Everybody knows that. I'm passionate about public education. I just believe we have choices for charter schools and private schools and homeschool. But most of our kids, at least until Obama last night, most of our kids are going to be in public schools, and we have to get it right. But it's a complex system, and we're always looking for better ways to improve it.
Lieutenant Governor, so you
Yeah,
talk
hey,
about directing the superintendents not
Yeah.
to follow.
Right.
How do you tell them where the money's gonna come from to make up the difference for those school lunches if that's where the money's lost?
Well, first of all, Tom, today, again, the president is saying this is our recommendation, and if you don't do this, I may pull your funding. So he's not going to pull the funding next week. So I think they can get through this next 3 weeks. Just stay on your plan. One of the things, by the way, Tom, that really bothered me about the superintendent and now the president We are now in the last couple of weeks of school. Kids are trying to graduate in some cases. Kids are trying to take their finals. Kids are trying to pass the courses. This is such a distraction to the teachers and the kids and the parents. It's so disruptive. But we'll work our way through it. The school districts just need to take a deep breath, know that probably 70% or more of the people in their district don't support it, and let us work through this, and let's see where this goes. We are going to have to make some decisions before the school year, obviously, but again, I'm going back, Tom, and making the case that we will not, look, we send our tax dollars up to the federal government with clean hands, and Barack Obama is trying to send the money back to us with dirty hands.
Lieutenant
And
Governor.
we're not going to do it. We're not going to take it. We'll figure it out, Tom. I don't know the answer today.
Lieutenant
Okay,
Governor,
Julie, let me get over, because I'll
Okay.
come back to you. Yes, sir.
thank you.
You said on the radio this morning that one of the reasons that you have a right to intervene in this case is because Fort Worth ISD takes state money, but that's the rationale that the federal government often gives for intervening. How are the two different?
No, well, they're very different. The state has a right to intervene when the superintendent of Fort Worth circumvents the school board and the parents. When you do that, you take away local control. Local control is defined by local people having a say in their government. The superintendent took away their ability to have a say. That's when the state steps in, and that's what I did. What Barack Obama is doing is totally different. Yes, there are federal money coming in. It's basically a small piece of what all the schools get in the nation. But he has no right to push down policy on schools that the parents don't want, that will be disruptive to schools, that does nothing to enhance education. The president is way over the line on this, and he needs to stay out of the local school board and the parents' decisions. I didn't involve myself in the parents and the school board. That'd have been a different issue. Had they voted on this, we just still had to take a look at this policy. Every now and then the state does get involved. We had the fracking case in Denton. Every now and then there are local policies pushed by cities or counties or school districts that have state interest. This had state interest, but in this case, in Fort Worth particularly, the parents were shut out and someone had to speak for them, and I decided to do it.
Lieutenant Governor, quick question.
Yes.
Quick question regarding North Carolina.
Last one for you, Julie, and I got
I
to run over.
promise.
Okay.
And you saw what happened in North Carolina when there was a battle over bathroom bills. You
Yeah.
saw businesses pull out.
No. Wait. I haven't seen anybody pull out. I haven't seen businesses pull out. Don't buy the myth here. Look, in Houston, they said the same thing. Oh, if Dan Patrick and the others defeat the mayor's ordinance, it's going to be the end of the world. Well, we still have the Final Four. We have the Super Bowl coming, and businesses are moving to Texas every day. It's nonsense, Julie. It's part of the propaganda of the political left.
Businesses threatened to pull out. There was artists that didn't go. They lost money
Well,
from tourism.
so big deal. Some artist doesn't want to come to some arena. They'll fill the day with an artist who does. Greed is works for the entertainment industry. If there's an open date in a concert hall, someone will book it. And I'm not going to let someone in Hollywood or some singer, oh gosh, we may not have him come in for a concert. We got to change our policy. Forget that. And this isn't going to impact business. The business community is going to figure this out real quick. Many of them do. When I talk to the boards of companies sometimes, they'll say, well, this is about equal rights. I say, no, this is not about equal rights. Do you have many board members are over 50 for the big company. I'll say, do you have any grandchildren? Oh, yes. Do you have a 70-year-old little granddaughter? Oh, yeah. I said, do you want her going in some public bathroom with a 30-year-old man? Of course not. I said, well, that's what you just approved. Target's finding out very quickly what happens when you're blind to an issue. Yes, ma'am.
Is the state of Texas trying to meet with another governor beside North Carolina?
Well, so far, this was a North Carolina issue, and as Governor Abbott said yesterday, he's been working with the Governor McCrory. I've been working with Lieutenant Governor Dan Forrest, who I know very well. But this is going to bring together states. So I think you'll see Attorney General stepping up to the plate on this. Yes, sir, in the back. You've been very
Going
patient.
back to the business issue, the Texas Association of Business has come out against anti-LGBT legislation.
Well, they're wrong.
More than 900
They're wrong.
Texas employers have signed a pledge in support of LGBT
Yeah.
inclusion.
Well,
are you going to stand up to all 900 of those?
Yes, I am.
You are.
Yeah, and so are the people of Texas. So are their employees. And the Texas Association of Business, which I usually agree with, and they're good folks, hard workers, small business people like myself, their association is wrong on this. This is not about equal rights. This is not about equal rights. No one's denying anyone their rights. Next question.
Is that issue more important
Yeah.
to you than the school funding issue?
Look, they're both very important, but the school funding issue for now has been resolved. I'm glad the Supreme Court acted. We know, I agree with the Supreme Court, it's an imperfect system. But that issue for now has been resolved, And we will now go back into the next session, as we always do, trying to figure out how to balance the funding so that every child gets the education as the Constitution says they're deserving of. And by the way, the Supreme Court said we're right, that we have been making sure we follow the Constitution. So that issue for now has been resolved. But school funding is always going to be an issue. It's half of our budget. And again, with the difference in property value, you know, this all ties into the property tax. I mean, this is a big issue. We'll figure it out.
Governor, just a point of clarification, you said you're in contact with a campaign about this. Is that the Trump campaign?
Yeah, I talked to, well, you know, the Trump campaign has some folks here. And since I'm have gotten in the middle of this week, they wanted to get some background, had some thoughts, and so I shared with them. Number one, it's very simple. This has nothing to do with improving education in America. Number two, Donald Trump should clearly say, if this is an executive order, you ought to repeal it on the first day he's in office. Number three, this is an affront to every family in America to tell families this is what you're going to do when it could be against their values or their beliefs. And so that's what I shared with them. It's pretty simple. It's not a very complicated issue. Yes, sir.
Governor, could you distinguish between the guidance that you issued to superintendents today in Texas?
Yeah.
How do you see that as not interference in local control? Not interfering in
I'm trying to give the superintendent's guidance because I'm sure today they're asking their associations, they're asking their legal teams, and they'll be asking the governor, the lieutenant governor, their senators, their representatives, what should we do? Look, most superintendents aren't going to want to follow this policy. So I'm giving them guidance. This is my recommendation as lieutenant governor. You have 3 weeks to go in the school year. Listen to your parents, listen to your school board, and work through this. But don't panic. And don't be blackmailed, and understand that as the state, we're just not going to accept 30 pieces of silver from Barack Obama.
Lieutenant Governor, what happens when they do adopt these policies?
For now, like lots of times in life when the federal government interferes, which they've interfered with our states too many times over the last 8 years, you just have to work through the system sometimes. And if I'm a superintendent, I'm sure not adopting this policy. If I'm a school board member, I'm sure going to support the superintendent not adopting this policy. And if they do adopt this policy, I think they will find that will be where you see the rubber meet the road of local control. I think any superintendent says, I'm going to follow the directions of the
Isn't that a
president.
decision that's up
Last
to the
question.
school boards, which are elected bodies?
Yeah.
That's how the people have a voice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what I'm saying, Phil, is I think if a superintendent or a school board says, yes, we're going to follow this policy from the president, I think they're going to hear from their parents.
Lieutenant Governor,
Last question, Jack.
I'm sorry if you answered this already. Have you had discussions with the Attorney General this morning about filing a lawsuit against the Obama administration?
We started last night having discussions. He and I are going to be visiting later. But look, this is very new, obviously. It occurred last night, and you know, we have to walk through this. That's why I'm saying let's be very clear what our position is. We're not going to be blackmailed by the president, and we're not going to sell out our children for 30 pieces of silver. That's our position. We'll figure this out over time. There will be court cases without question. This will be a battle. It's going to impact the presidential election. It's going to impact local school board. It's going to impact everything. And it's going to be an impetus to push school choice, increase charter schools. Actually, public charter schools could be impacted by this because they do receive public money. So we have to look at that. There are lots of issues. It's going to increase homeschooling, all these things. Jack, both of you, and forgive me, I don't know your first name. David. Jack, and you make a great point. And Julie said, this is upheaval for no reason. Upheaval of our public school system and our families. And so a lot has to be worked through. But I just want to be very clear today, we're not standing down in Texas. That's the view of the Lieutenant Governor and the view of the Texas Senate as I view it. We're not going to stand down on this issue. I won't speak for all 31 senators, but my view is the leader of the Texas Senate. That's my view, and someone who has suddenly been involved in this issue. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Governor.